Dear Clash Guards, I confess my emotions have been a mess. Cause you changed everything we ever knew. From witches to poison and the Queen walked too. Whoa, I've been wrong, I was wrong. Been a town hall night, way too long. Getting hogs and Valkyries. I'll push that button and believe in you again.
Welcome to episode 102 of Pineapples and Thorns. I'm Kat, and today I have two very good friends and regular guests on the pod. Darth Yoda, the leader of SOG, and CallMeTee, the guru of strategic rushing. Welcome, guys.
Hey, how's it going? Thanks for having us.
Good to be here. Happy to chat some Clash.
Once again. Yeah, it's definitely been a while since my last episode, so I'm glad you could join me today.
Yeah, and I guess a lot of blame is on my shoulders too, right? So like you just put that out there.
Well, you know what? I wasn't going to say anything, but it is entirely Yoda's fault.
Yeah, throw him right under the bus. That's fine.
Yep.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, I guess I threw myself under the bus, but I'll take it. It's my fault. Sorry, folks.
All right. As your punishment, you have to give us the CFF news. So take it away.
Okay. Thanks, Kat. So I got quite a bit to talk about today as far as the CFF news goes. First up, in SOG, we just completed our monthly 1v1 tournament. That actually just concluded yesterday, and the two finalists was Fuzzy and King Ethan. They went to battle, and ultimately Fuzzy won, so he is our monthly 1v1 champion in SOG. And of course, there appears to be some level of shenanigans with those two because all of a sudden King Ethan is referring to Fuzzy as master. So I guess there was some sort of a side bet that occurred. Not sure how long that's going to continue, but pretty funny nonetheless. Up next, so as far as CWL goes, have some pretty exciting news on the SOG front. We finally promoted back into Champs 1. So we were super proud and excited to finally achieve that feat. For those that don't know, we were in Champs 1 before, and we got booted out, and it has been just a struggle for us to get back. Month after month, just super try-harding, sweaty try-hard mode, trying to get back, and we finally were able to make it happen. So really proud of the team over there. Up next, we actually just recently, over the last couple of weeks, we had a friendly war, and the war was between RedThorn and the Rated. It was a super fun event, and of course, it wouldn't be a RedThorn event if there wasn't some shenanigans. And
Always.
the two team captains, namely initially Fuzzy, started to go out and recruit OP players to play in the Rated and stack his roster. And Kat, I initially thought that it was just Fuzzy that was pulling these shenanigans, because he was doing it openly, and I didn't realize until well, let me back up. I was playing on the rated side, so I got recruited by Fuzzy himself, and I didn't realize that Kat, you were also recruiting. I guess a lot more subtly than Fuzzy was, because when I saw the war map, I happened to see a lot of folks over in Redthorn that were pretty OP players that you apparently had recruited as well. I saw, well, who'd I see? I know I saw Trample Damage over there. I saw C-Note and a bunch of other folks. So
Well, C-Note was on your side.
was C-Note on my side? Okay.
Yeah.
You also had your fair share of recruiting. So
I did.
that war resulted in a close win for the Rated, but both teams played exceptionally well. One of the nice wrinkles that I appreciated about that war was we decided to go with single hit. So that meant that there was going to be a winner and not another tie that we typically see in regular wars. So I thought that was a nice little wrinkle. But congratulations to the folks over at the Rated and RedThorn as well. That was an awesome event. Okay, so moving on to give a brief update here on how CFF Esports is going. So we've now we're several months deep into Town Hall 17, and the esports scene has really been taking off over the last say month or so. There's been quite a bit of tournaments that's going on, and we have been participating in a lot of them as far as the CFF esports team goes. Most recently, we actually made the playoffs in the Light Cup. So there was kind of like a round robin initial, like stage one, and we ended up going, I believe it was 5-1, and we finished in 24th place going out of stage one. and now we're in the playoffs. So we're looking forward to that. We also participated in the World's warm up. We actually did that this morning. We were all online participating in that. But last weekend we did it as well, and we actually did fairly well. We made it to like stage four of that tournament, so we were getting really close to maybe having a shot at going deep. But it was a lot of fun, and the team did really well. So super proud of those guys. All right, next up, across the pond, we've got the Brits on tour, and these guys, they're sometimes quiet, right? They don't talk a lot, but boy, do
Hmm.
they know how to play Clash of Clans over there. Let me tell you, and I have several friends over in their clans, but right now they are on an impressive win streak. So they actually have a 45 war win streak that they're currently on right now. So
Amazing.
big shout out to those guys over there. That's just super exciting, and what a feat to achieve. That war streak is really awesome. All right. Up next is over to one of the CFF clans called Noble Hero. And I want to talk about this a little bit because they do something that is pretty cool that maybe some other clans can take some cues from. So every CWL, they have what they call the hero of the month. And basically, this person is voted on by the clan leadership, and it's basically like an MVP award. So it can be given for, all different kinds of reasons. It could be based off of performance. It could be CWL donations, or maybe this individual, did a lot helping people plan their attacks. Whatever it might be. But it's pretty cool. So every month they vote on somebody, and then somebody's named the Noble Hero of the Month. So this month that person was Crab. So congratulations to Crab over at Noble Hero. And then
Awesome.
finally, some really neat news. Good friends of mine and leaders over at Kent Greenhouse, Sky and Barky, in case you guys didn't know, they are actually a couple, and they will be getting married in April. So I wanted to say a big congratulations to them. And a really interesting story for those two is they actually met in the CFF during a Draft Wars event. And I didn't know this, but apparently Sky was in charge of the draft and Barky was on her team, and apparently she forgot to put him in the war. and and for somehow that turned into a budding relationship, and now they're getting married in April. So congratulations to those two.
Well,
And that's all I got
congratulations.
for that's all I got for CFF news. Back to you, Kat.
Okay. Yeah, congratulations to them. That's exciting stuff.
Yeah.
And congrats to the esports team. That's pretty amazing stuff. Uh, so let's talk briefly about, we've heard, what accounts you guys play in Clash of Clans.
Hmm.
Is there anything new on that front, either of you, T?
I'm still just playing my one account and just cruising along.
Yeah.
I like every time I look at my alt, which I've had to position it for holding leaders, in different clans, sometimes for CWL and stuff like that. But every time I look at that Town Hall 14, and I'm just like, I do not want to do the pet grind again. Like, I just absolutely not. So for me, I'm just cruising on the main account and just keeping it nice and easy.
How about you, Yada?
Yeah, so I'm still actively playing on my Town Hall 14 because I love it. But it's permamax, so I don't really have to do anything with it. And then my two primary accounts are my two Town Hall 17s, and I keep them both up in Legends League because everybody knows Legends League is one of my favorite parts of the game. But
Mm-hmm.
something that we were actually discussing this morning on when we were in voice chat for esports is I'm considering actually taking my one account out of Legends, or at least maybe just running it in low Legends. That way, I can have some additional time to practice in hard mode. And I know we're going to get an opportunity to talk about hard mode, later on in the episode. But
Mm-hmm.
it's a challenge. Like you could there's a big difference between regular and hard mode. And for a player like me that's doing 16 Legends hits a day, and then also my war attacks, like I don't have time to be able to FC and practice in hard mode like I would like to. So that's one of
Yeah.
the things I'm considering changing is just dropping one of my accounts down, and then that way I will use that time just to practice hard mode and FCs.
Yeah, I know that's definitely true. I know I have my two Town Hall 17s that I play, and I stopped worrying about doing all my legend hits on my second one and just have focused on my main quite a bit. And I found that by not doing my legend hits on my second one, I've fallen quite far behind as far as like upgrading and stuff. So I've had to refocus and work on that one a little bit more because I definitely want to be max before they drop another town hall on us next winter. So I hear you.
So tell me, like, you and I had a conversation a couple of days ago because you had made it to the third spot on my friends list and legends, and there's I've got some really OP people on that list. So what changed? Were you using a new army comp? Because we were like a week out from end of season. You were like over 5,800 cups. So what's going on there?
Well, that was like a one-off. It's like I am definitely not up that high now. I've had a couple of rough Legends days, so definitely down around the 5,500 mark now. But I don't know, everything was just clicking for me, and I was taking enough defenses and stuff, so it was working, and reality has come back to me, and
that's
I'm
the
not up
Legends
there.
grind. Yeah,
I'm
it's
off the
high and
list.
low.
I don't know. So let's talk a little bit about Town Hall 17. I wanted to sort of get both of your thoughts on it from the sort of the 20,000 feet. What do you guys think about it? We've been playing it for a while now. Do you like what they've done so far? What do you like the most? What do you like the least? T, you want to go first?
Sure. I'm enjoying it more than I expected. I think starting this patch. Previously, I had still kind of been on that train of like they downgraded the base defenses too far for me, where like the Gigabomb in the town hall was such like a warping defense that when they removed it, it kind of to me made the game a little too easy. Like even though some of the other defenses were strong and like the flame spitters are like okay, it still just kind of felt weird. Like it felt weird to me that I could send Yetis into a town hall and the town hall would blow up and then the Yetis would still be there. That was like it took a long time before I was like, okay, I guess this is just normal now. And now with the new building and some of the new defensive levels and some of these other things, it's like it doesn't feel like every attack is a free 3-star unless I completely whiff my giant arrow and completely biff my entry, right? It feels like, okay, I need to do a little more thinking in order to get triples, which to me is like where the game should be. I don't like when the game is at like hey, I'm just going to drop everything in a corner, close my game, and come back and have a triple, So I'm enjoying it more now, starting from this. And in addition, I was also still annoyed that Town Hall 16s had their supercharge levels, so they were for a very long time harder to hit than a new Town Hall 17. So it was just this weird transitionary period that we were in that I was not enjoying a lot. But we seem to be moving past that time frame, and I think Town Hall 17 is starting to, I'm starting to warm up on Town Hall 17, as it were.
Yoda?
Yeah, so my thoughts are actually pretty similar to T's on it. When Town Hall 17 initially dropped, as a matter of fact, the three of us, we were on a podcast just a few days after it had dropped. I was in like panic mode. I was like, oh my God, like it was so easy. I thought the game was going to be completely broken. And the reality is it was too easy for the first couple of months of it. It was before the defenses started catching up. It was like T said, like I would much rather hit a Town Hall 17 than a Town Hall 16. In the initial weeks after release. Now that being said, I also agree with T that this last update that they provided, I think it did do. I'm not going to say it did enough to balance the game to where I would like to see it, but it definitely made things more difficult. Like we were just on this tear in SOG as far as our regular wars go. We were just constantly, putting up perfect wars, and we had this incredible streak going ourselves. And then that update dropped, and of course there was balance changes. There was some nerfs that occurred, some buffs, the new defense, and I know we'll get into that. But I think all of those things combined did a nice job of at least bringing the game a little closer to where I would like it to be. Um, I would say that the best thing that I have enjoyed that has come out of the updated Town Hall 17 has been hard mode. The new hard mode is, I think it provides the vehicle for people who want to play the game more competitively. And then also, we still have a game, in regular mode where, to T's point, the masses out there have a reasonable chance to be able to triple. Um, One of the other things that I enjoy about Town Hall 17 has also been just the variety and strategies that people can deploy. If we go back if we go back to the dark days of Town Hall 15, and pretty much the only viable strategy you could do was like a Sarge blimp and just pray, right? But that's not the case now. There's plenty of ground armies that work. There's plenty of air armies that work. In SOG, it's a complete mixing pot as far as the different strategies that people are running, and I think that's really healthy for the game. And I think some of that came as a result to like like too many people were using the RC charge, right? So Supercell did the right thing, and they put some nerfs in there to the invisibility spell and to the equipment and things like that. And people started moving away from that and trying different strategies. So that's probably my favorite thing is just the variety of strategies people can use. I think that's really healthy for the game.
Yeah, I agree. I know I've been playing this game for a very, very long time, longer than probably I like to admit. And I think back to the glory days of Town Hall 9, and I think what a lot of people forget is, because we laugh at Town Hall 9 now, but back then, Town Hall 9 was extremely difficult to triple. You had to really put a lot of planning into your attacks, but there was a variety of different compositions that would work,
Mm-hmm.
whether it was air or ground. And people will say Town Hall 9 was the most balanced because not every attack you did was a triple. And as we've gotten more and more types of defenses and actually offenses, as we've moved up, things have definitely gotten quote unquote easier. And we start, especially after Town Hall 16, I think that really spoiled a lot of people. And now you go in expecting to be able to triple, and you shouldn't be expecting to triple. Like you say, Yoda, you should have to put a little bit of thought and work into it. And
Mm-hmm.
I think that's definitely very healthy for the game. So let's talk a bit about the minion prince. Do you guys use that at all? What do you think of it?
To the point that I cannot fathom putting him down with a regular builder. At like every single level that my minion prince has, he's 85, I think, right now, has been with a book. I think maybe like the first level or two when Town Hall 17 dropped, when we weren't really sure how to use him yet.
Mm-hmm.
I might have used a regular builder, but since then he's been in every single attack that I've done since. I maxed both of his initial starting equipment, even when people were like, "Oh, just leave the henchman puppet, leave that at level 1. You don't need to upgrade that. Like a better one will be coming down the line." I was like, "Nope. I use him in every attack. I will take every minor improvement that I can get from him, immediately max." That's actually, other than the healer puppet, that's the only puppet equipment that I have maxed.
Well, that's very definite. So I'm guessing you're using air then.
Yeah, I messed around a little bit with Itsu's ground hit, where he also used the minion prince, and I don't, it was either, I mean, it was 100% it was user error. I just wasn't using it right, but I couldn't get the like timing. I don't know. It was just like something not clicking with me, where I had like a couple triples with it, but for the most part, I was getting, high 90% 2 stars, and I was like, why am I doing a harder attack than what I've been using Hydra still, because it still works. And I was like, why am I using a harder, more difficult to execute strategy when this other one is still, worst case scenario is also getting me a 95% 2-star, but more often than not is tripling. So
Fair enough. Yoda?
Yeah, I mean, I'm an air attacker. I think everybody knows that, and I absolutely love the Minion Prince. Still, like T, I've never put him down. He is maxed, and boy, those 20 levels were pretty hard to get through with just using books. But he was actually the first hero that I maxed out in the game following when he was released. And he's overpowered. I mean, that the orb, his ability with the orb does so much when it freezes all of those defenses. It's so powerful that you could just, if if things go your way and you have a correct plan and an entry point, you could just completely overload a base with that thing. So yeah, I like T. He's been in every single attack I've done since he's been released. And then primarily people were using him only on air attacks, but recently I am seeing quite a bit of people meet with success by using him in ground attacks as well.
Mm.
So it wouldn't surprise me if you start seeing him used a lot more often in ground, even though he's definitely known as more of an air strategy.
Confession time. I have never used him at
What?
Oh
all.
Lord,
Are you kidding?
I don't know. He's just been upgrading. I'm just working on
All right,
leveling him up.
Kat. Here's the deal. Okay, whenever his next upgrade is done, you're
Uh-huh.
coming to Sons of Guns, and we're gonna do some FCs, and we're gonna teach you, and you're gonna use the minion prince, and we're gonna ruin all of the other heroes for you, and you will use the minion prince from then on.
Fair enough.
It, the the
till he gets his nerfs.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, realistically, the reason why he's so strong is the Dark Orb done well is busted. Like exactly like what Yoda said, it's overpowered. It's insane. And the only thing that keeps me from saying that I think that the piece of equipment is OP or not is that it does require timing, attention, planning, and skill to get good value out of it. The number of times that like a little skeleton has popped up that I didn't notice that makes the minion prince shoot the orb behind him, or he has
Right.
like a weird angle and I only get like one defense in it. Like there is a learning curve. Plus, you need to like have him deploy correctly so that he follows your army correctly, so
Mhm.
that he doesn't get blown up by black mines, and the orb is good and all of those things. So to me, I feel like he's in a very good place where when you use him well, he feels amazing. And if you aren't paying attention and you don't use him right, it's terrible. And I think that's like what you want as a balance, right? You want
Right.
something that feels good to use well and is punishing if you use it poorly.
Fair enough. Okay, I'll hold you to that.
And typically, in my attacks where I triple, the minion prince is always alive. Like the guy
Right.
just doesn't die. He's always there for the end of the battle. All the other heroes will be gone, and I can't tell you how many times that he will personally get me a triple because he's the last one alive, and he's just plugging away at the final defense or whatever, and secures the triple for me. He's that
Yeah.
good.
Every time that I have not tripled, it's been because the way I deployed my army, my minion prince like makes a hard left when I wasn't expecting him to, and he goes off on his own and eats 4 or 5 black mines and dies, and then the rest of the attack kind of peters out. And that's the thing. It's like if he's supporting your troops, you're gonna triple, and if he's not, you probably won't.
Yep.
Okay, I've been told. All right. Speaking of equipment and stuff, what do you think that Supercell could do to improve the ore situation? The economy is terrible, it seems. It takes forever to level stuff up.
Go ahead, Jake.
I think there's a very simple solution that they should implement. It's mainly one, right? The
Mhm.
the number one thing that they should do is make it so that every single attack that you do anywhere earns you some base amount of ore. Obviously not friendly challenges, but like any matchmaking attack that you do, any war attack that you do, regardless of result, should give you some base level of ore. And they should increase the amount that you're expected to get every single day from every source. Because right now, we're looking at over. Okay, so the ore question is one of those things that's very annoying for me to answer because it depends on like your town hall level, it depends on your league level, it depends on your clan's war win rate. So it's
Mm.
one of those things where it's like depending on how all of those things line up. Oh, also whether or not you buy the event pass ever. So right now the way it stands is if you teleported your way to a max town hall 17 account with all level 1 equipment. So you never earned any ore, you never leveled any of your equipment up, and you were just day one. Just say you did a judo sloth special and you just gemmed your way to a max town hall 17. or we'll find a Town Hall 16 is basically the same. Here are some stats for you. If you are in Titan 3 and your clan has a 50% war win and you do not buy the event pass ever, it's 960 days before you'll have maxed every piece of equipment in the game, which is insane.
Wild. It's wild.
Now, the same stat, if you're in Titan 3, 50% war win, and you buy the event pass and do what I recommend, which is essentially buy any equipment that's there that you don't already have, but make sure that you buy out all of the orange ore and as much of the purple ore as you can. You go from 960 days to be maxed to 665 days.
Wow.
Which is a 300-day cut or a
Crazy.
third. Yeah. So the event pass is one of those things where it might not seem like it's a big difference, but it is a massive difference. And in that change, you go from orange ore being your bottleneck. So in that Titan 3 50% war win, no event pass, you're at 960 days to earn enough orange ore to max all of the epic equipment that's in the game. And your purple ore is at 892 days, so about 70 or so days faster than your orange ore. But if you're buying the event pass, now you've cut your orange ore requirement down to about 570-ish days, so almost 400-day cut. However, you're only getting about a 200-day cut on the purple ore. So your purple ore is actually going to be your limiting factor, even if you're all the way up in Legends League. So there's like a couple avenues for them to improve here. Number one would be bring all of the ore incomes in line with each other so that there's not this massive disparity in, the amount of time required to do these things. Where, again, remember our caveats are you're starting from Town Hall 17 day one, which is not what most people do. So most people's orange ore bottlenecks are going to be even higher than that because it takes a long time before you're actually earning a reasonable amount of orange ore outside of your event passes. So that's like number one. Number two would be we need to cut that total time way down because it's just insane. And especially because you're not using all of your equipment all the time. And I would normally say, like when we were, just launching Town Hall 16 and equipment was new and everything was interesting, we only had a few pieces of equipment to deal with. I was like, well, what does it really matter to like the time it takes to max everything? All you really need is to max 8, right? Mm-hmm. You only need 2 pieces of equipment per hero. And that time is around 250 days-ish if you're buying the event pass and 420 days if you're not, which it's not great. It's not the best, but it's reasonable. It's one of those things. It's under a year if you're buying the event pass, which, if you're following my guide and you're getting gold pass, you're getting event pass, you're probably looking at around 16 to 18 months to go from Town Hall 2 to max. Again, caveat for time reductions and new releases and all of those things.
Mm-hmm.
But so you'll finish your equipment before you'll finish all of your stuff, right? So that's okay. But now when the premise is equipment can be nerfed, equipment can be buffed, and like the meta shifts on which equipment is good when. If you just watch Itsu's like first videos, or maybe not even the first videos, just go to August and watch Itsu's like best equipment for each hero video and watch August, September, October, November, December, January. I would be willing to bet that almost every hero in every month has a different pairing except maybe the Grand Warden and the Archer Queen. Those are the only two that have kind of stabilized, but that kind of depends. Like if you're doing air attacks, the Archer Queen's equipment has been locked for months, but that's neither here nor there. But now it's like you need all of your equipment maxed. You need almost every piece of equipment has a viable use and a viable strategy, which on one hand, that's great. We're in a good spot for equipment viability, but it does mean, well, if I want to do ground attacks, I need to make sure I have this hero leveled up and this pair of equipment leveled up for that hero. And if I don't have those things, well, then I need this other hero with these other pair of equipment. And it's like, okay, well, now I need all of my equipment to be maxed. And in order for me to have a viable attack strategy of ground and air, I need almost 15 to 18 pieces of equipment. It's like, they just, I don't know, increase the base incomes by a lot, increase the amount of orange ore that we get by a lot, and like equalize these incomes between the 3 different types of ore.
Yeah. Well, I mean, they need also to give us other ways to earn it. Like if you look at, we're in the middle of clan games right now. There's no ore in the rewards.
Mm-hmm.
Why isn't there starry ore in there somewhere?
Mm-hmm.
It'd be extremely motivating for people to participate.
Yeah, that would be the first time in Clash of Clans history that the guide would recommend a resource out of clan games.
Yoda, do you have any thoughts on the ore stuff?
Well, that's kind of a tough act to follow there. I agree with everything that T had said. I haven't necessarily felt the equipment crush like most people have. I spend money on the game, so I've bought ore. I get the event pass every month, so all of my equipment is basically maxed already. I'm there. But where I think there is a big problem is with the free to play player, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's a large portion of the community is basically free to play. And I could not imagine what those folks are going through right now, especially when it comes to Starry Ore, to be able to upgrade their equipment. It's absolutely insane. There has to be more ore in the game that they can earn, specifically Starry ore for the free to play player. And like T's idea about getting a little bit of ore for every attack, I think that's a great one. Kat, your idea about putting it in clan games, I think that's a great one. But there's just got to be additional ways for the free to play player in order to be able to get these ores. And look, I'm okay with them having to put in a bunch of extra work, right? I mean, that's kind of how the game is based, right? People who spend money on the game, they advance quicker, right? We spent the money. So, but there should be a way for the free to play player to be able to put that additional work in, like to T's point, like maybe it's in attacks, like they're having to do a lot more attacks or whatever. But right now, there is no way for them to be able to get that starry ore that they're going to need to upgrade their equipment. And look, I also agree with you. Like I'm the strategy guy, right? So I keep up with the meta. I understand all the various strategies that are out there. And in order to be able to pivot, you have to have this equipment needs to be, maxed or max-ish, because it seems like every couple of weeks, there's a new strategy that comes out. And that new strategy implores the different types of equipment. And you're really putting yourself at a disadvantage if you're, stuck to just, one set of equipment for every hero. You get pigeonholed into one strategy or whatever, and then that doesn't become fun for your average player that wants to experiment and do everything they're seeing on YouTube.
100%. All right. So we just got a little bit of an update in February. So let's spend some time chatting about some of the stuff here. They gave us some new levels on defenses such as Expo, Scattershot, the Hidden Tesla, and the Mortar. Do you guys notice any difference on them? The aesthetics, do you like it, Yoda?
Yeah, so and we kind of talked about this a little bit in the beginning, but I think that the balance of the game is getting a little bit better with these additional levels on the defense. That new what are we calling that, multi cannon thing that we merged from the builder base. I mean, that thing is pretty punishing, especially in fast attack mode. So I think that the update brought nice balance back to the game. I think that was definitely needed. As far as the aesthetics go, I love it. I love the way the new scatter shots look. I think my favorite thing is that hidden Tesla. That thing just looks wild. I finally got a few of them maxed, and the aesthetic on that is really good. But bottom line, I think that the balance changes that they made, so the nerfs that came out to the equipment, and the invisibility spell, and then the buffs that we saw on the defenses, I think were a positive thing for the game. And to T's point earlier, I'm enjoying Town Hall 17 more than I had been in the past following this update.
T?
Yeah, I mean, my go-to aesthetic in high school was a black leather jacket, slicked like spiky black hair, black pants, black shoes. So like this black and purple look in Town Hall 17 is appealing to like a primal part of my consciousness. So I like it. I think I don't know that I would say it's one of my favorites because I did really enjoy Town Hall 13 and Town Hall 15's aesthetic, but it's up there. I'm enjoying it so far, and I think we're starting in our regular Wars and Sons of Guns to see some of these levels be finished, and I'm very curious to see how March CWL goes because it's like, just like January and February were kind of this transitionary period between the overly easy release of Town Hall 17 and like kind of fixing that and doing some balance changes to get it in a better place. I think March, you're going to see the difference between the people that spend money on the game and the people that don't. And that CWL in March is going to be wild because I think it's a big difference because you've lost all of the supercharged levels from the previous Town Hall. So you no longer get that kind of, like, for example, the scatter shot. If you had both of your supercharged levels on it, a Town Hall 16 and a Town Hall 17 had effectively the same amount of power in their scatter shots. Now you have a nerf to the Town Hall 16 because they no longer have that supercharged level. And the first level of the scatter shot is effectively the same as both of the previous supercharged levels. It's not quite. The Town Hall 17 scatter shot has a little more hit points than the 16 scatter shot with both supercharged levels, but it's close enough. And then you can supercharge the Town Hall 17 scatter shot. So now you're talking about an actual difference between Town Hall 17 and 16. And I think a lot of clans have been able to kind of float a little higher in the CWL leagues than they necessarily could have based on their 16 to 17 breakdown. So I think this is going to be one of those things where you're going to see the number one clan in a league is going to be filled with Town Hall 17s that have spent money, pushed, upgraded, and kind of gotten all of these new levels done. And I think on the bottom end, you're going to see those clans that have been kind of maintaining and previously getting 4th, 5th, 6th, and staying in those leagues. I think they're going to get just shoved out of the leagues. So to me, that's great. That's kind of what I'm always been preaching for strategic rushers is to like get those important upgrades and get higher faster so that you can kind of exploit those little differences in balance.
Yoda, you mentioned the geared up archer tower / cannon. Wanted to dive a little deeper into that with both of you. So you have to have both defenses geared up, which means that you must have specific levels on the builder base to get the defense at 17. Is that going to impact the strategic rushers moving towards Town Hall 18 eventually, T?
So there's a funny little stat that when you had initially sent us the notes for this episode and we were talking about what we were going to discuss, I went to my Aura spreadsheet, which is where all the stats that I quoted from before came from. And I was like, I better make sure that I have this updated and all my figures are accurate and all my numbers are working and so on. And so I was like, oh, you know what? I never updated my income for the war part of your Aura income for Town Hall 17's release. So I was like, oh, I better do that. I better make sure that, I have those figures up to date and everything. And I learned that Town Hall 17 and Town Hall 16 give you the exact same amount of starry ore, the exact same amount of glowy ore, and the exact same amount of shiny ore, win or loss. So what that means for strategic rushing is, luckily, the advice that I've been giving everybody is get to Town Hall 16 as soon as possible because that maxes out your ore income. Once you're at Town Hall 16, that's when you're going to buckle down. You're going to start working on your heroes. You're going to start working on your offense. You're going to get all of those things in line so that you don't need to rely on hero and power potions to do your CWL attacks, which means you're now maximizing your CWL medals, which means you're getting more hammers, and all of these things compound in a way to make the strategic rushing experience so much faster than if you were to max. Now, for strategic rushers needing to have this building done and in place for Town Hall 18, well, it depends. Right? Number one, as a strategic rusher, you should be doing your builder base to get your sixth builder as soon as possible, which means by definition, you will have to have done your geared up upgrades. So for 90% of strategic rushers who are listening to my guide, won't matter because you'll get that thing in the first 100 days of your account creation. You'll have your sixth builder, you'll have the geared up upgrades, and you'll be fine. But for anyone who was like, I'm going to outsmart T and I'm going to do things differently, and I don't need that sixth builder because I use my gems on the goblin builder, and that's how I get around needing to get the sixth builder. So I don't need to do the gear up, and I don't need to spend any of my game time on builder base. Well, those people are going to pay a little bit of a penalty. So, it's one of those things where if you're doing stuff correctly, it's a non-factor for rushers. But if you're trying to be a little cute and not play builder base like you're supposed to and like is recommended in the guide, eventually it's going to be a problem for you because you can't. Like I said, in 100 days, roughly plus or minus, from the account creation, you can get your sixth builder online. Unfortunately, unless you're willing to drop a couple $1,000s, there's not really any way to do it faster than that. That is the fastest way. So if you decide, I don't need that sixth builder, I'm not going to get it, I'm going to just wait and do it later. Well, whenever you decide that you want to go to Town Hall 18, you're going to need to spend an extra 100 days doing builder-based stuff. So,
bottom line, listen to T.
Yeah, exactly. There's a reason everything is in the guide. It's an edited guide. There's nothing in there that's irrelevant. It's all there for a reason.
All right. Another thing that we get at, I guess we get this at Town Hall 16, is the new siege machine, the troop launcher. It's a stationary siege machine that throws troops. It's kind of similar to the goblin barrel idea on Clan Capital. Max level is 4. Thoughts on this, Yoda?
Yeah, so I did. So I was one of the suckers that maxed that thing on the very first day. It sounded so cool. Like I'm gonna launch my troops, all the way across the base. This thing is gonna be wild. And so I spent the money and I maxed the thing on day one, and I put out a communication in SOG. I'm like, hey, if anybody wants the new siege machine and wants to play with it today, just let me know and I'll send them to you. And nobody requested it. Like it was crickets. It was absolute crickets. Like not a single person wanted to use this thing. And I was like, oh crap, did I just waste my resources upgrading it? And the answer to that question is yes, I did. Because I cannot get the damn thing to work. Like I've tried, people were like, well, put ice golems in there. I was like, oh, that's a great idea. Tried that. It didn't work. Like it feels like it shoots the troops to such random locations that it's just completely unhelpful. Like you do yourself a lot more justice just by picking one of the OG siege machines and just running with that because maybe I'm just a bad at the game, but I couldn't get this thing to work, and I have not seen a single person in SOG run that siege machine. So yeah, that's my thoughts on it. Maybe to get a buff one day or something, or maybe the AI will be worked out a little bit better. But for right now, it's pretty worthless to me. What say you guys?
Go ahead,
So
T.
when I first started playing, it was August of 2019, and Town Hall 13 was around the corner. And every time there's speculation on what's coming in the new Town Hall, you can go on the Clash of Clans subreddit, or at the time you could have gone on the forum, and you'll see people speculating what's coming. And from the moment I started playing, people have been like, we should have a siege machine that sits on the outside of the base and it shoots troops into the base. And then Town Hall 13 was coming out, and people said, we should have a siege machine that sits on the outside of the base, and it shoots troops into the base. And rinse and repeat. Town Hall 14, 15, 16, and now 17. And every time, like especially when the log launcher was being teased, and people were seeing like logs rolling into the base, everybody was like, "Oh, you're gonna have like a troop in there, and the log is gonna break, and then the troop is gonna come out." And I just think that the universal truth is never listen to your players' ideas. It's just, I don't know. It's so bad. I don't know how they fix it. It's one of those things where I think it would need a siege barracks level. Like, it would have to invalidate the siege barracks, essentially. You would need to get free troops from using this thing to even start to consider using it. And then you would also need, like Yoda said, you would need a AI revamp so that there would be some level of predictability of where the troops end up, what troop ends up where in the lineup. Like, there's just, it just seems like you're taking your clan castle troops and just flinging them into defenses for no reason. And one of the things that's kind of become, I don't know if it's required, but because there's so much damage in the bases now, a single troop deployed almost anywhere under fire is going to just get deleted and is not going to accomplish anything. Which is why you need, your warden, your heroes, your funneling troops, your distraction troops, your spells. All of those things are what are allowing individual troops to do stuff. So without any of that support and coupling it with a bit of a random generation of where these things end up, it's like, well, you're not really getting any value from this that wouldn't be provided by a siege barracks, or if you need surgical deployment somewhere in the base, a blimp, or if you need ice golems, you could just bring them.
Yeah.
So I think they have their work cut out for them to get this into a good place. And I think the starting point would have to be something like either you're getting free troops like the siege barracks, or maybe you start flinging like wall breakers, except they do damage to buildings as well. So it's like an artillery as opposed to a troop delivery.
Yeah, I think just because you can add something into the game doesn't mean you should.
Right.
We didn't need another ground siege machine. Like if you look at each siege machine, each one fulfills a specific purpose,
Except the wall breaker.
Well, yeah, but just like this one doesn't, it just seems like just this random thought. Like you said, they saw this request from players over the years, and it was like on somebody's little, oh, we should maybe do this. And they thought, oh, let's just do this because, we can. It serves no purpose. I have yet to see anybody actually take one of these things and use it. And I just actually finished upgrading my siege machine camp thing.
Workshop.
Thank you. I couldn't think of the word. It literally just finished today, but I think the only person I ever had request one of these things, and it just threw me for a loop because I couldn't donate it, was Trample. Yeah. When he was over for the Friendly War, he requested one, and I looked at it. I can't donate that.
I have an idea. I think we need to have a 50v50 CFF Friendly War where everyone has to use that siege machine.
Oh, that's cruel. That's just mean.
Right? But you got to figure
it out.
Right, exactly. Like the only way you figure it out is by using it. And nobody's going to use it unless we make them.
Okay, well, you've just volunteered to organize it. So
well, I don't know about
that. Okay, moving along. There's some other stuff that we've gotten. They gave us a new piece of equipment for the Minion Prince. It unlocks at Town Hall 10. The metal pants. Super spiffy. He's the best dressed hero on the block. It creates a protective barrier that reduces damage taken temporarily. Have you guys maxed that piece of equipment?
Yeah, so I did on day one. I mean, like we talked about earlier.
I'm surprised.
The Minion Prince was, he's my favorite hero, and I was sitting on a whole bunch of wars, so I did max it on day one. What a silly name though, the metal pants. Like, could we be a little bit more clever? I've been calling it the chastity belt, but yeah.
The chain belt.
Yeah, exactly, like the medieval times.
Hmm.
But that equipment, it just the problem with it is it doesn't synergize with either of the two other pieces of equipment.
Mhm.
So it actually acts as in like almost like a redundant sense, because if you run it with the orb, the orb is already freezing the defenses, right? So you're gonna pop that, and the defenses are frozen, and then the metal pants are, you're able to soak up more damage, but you're taking less damage anyway. So it almost feels redundant. And then like if you were to run it, say with the little minion guys, well, they're popping out in front and they're soaking up damage anyway, right? So they're the
Hmm.
ones taking the damage while he's wearing the metal pants. So right now, it's not a very effective piece of equipment. I would not recommend people use it. But in the future, I think it could become very powerful when they inevitably release a piece of equipment that it pairs well with it. But right now, there's just nothing that it works real great with. What do you guys
Mhm.
think?
Mine's level 1, so that might give some thoughts. I think Yoda, you hit the nail on the head, right? It's not a piece of equipment that solves a problem that the Minion Prince was facing. And it doesn't unlock anything that the Minion Prince couldn't already accomplish, right? Because like the Dark Orb is exactly like you said. Not only is it slowing defenses, it's area of effect, it's long lasting, and it's doing damage. It's everything that you wanted. And then the henchman puppet gives you a defensive retarget because he goes invisible for, half a second or whatever it is. And then you got your little henchman going ahead, which the henchman can eat traps. The henchman can get attention of defenses. They can do damage. Again, everything that you want from the equipment pop, right? Where I don't know. I think if it was, instead of being a timed ability, if it became a shield that was incoming damage based, right? So say, ignore me on the specifics of the numbers, but say for the next 20,000 damage that comes in, it reduces that to 2,000 damage, right?
Mhm.
And it didn't have a time limit. So then that would give you something like, okay, I don't mind that it's overlapping with the use case of the orb or the henchman puppet. It's just a flat amount of extra damage that the minion prince can take. And that would be interesting. That would be something where you're like, okay, well, it's not really interesting because it's kind of like a passive effect, but it's something that would be usable and
Right.
viable and different, you know?
So let me ask you about this then, because we've got two things that they've given us in this update that weren't really needed per se. Are they just throwing things at us to give us stuff to do, or and aka make more money off of us by buying stuff to upgrade them? Why do you think they keep giving us things like this that aren't the game isn't crying for this sort of thing?
I think there's a level of throwing things at the wall to see what sticks, where Supercell has had a history of coming out with stuff where the player base is like, "What is this for? Why did you give this to us? And this is worthless." And to Yoda's point, I do think that the metal pants could be viable with some other piece of equipment, right? I would question, why give us the pants first then? that
Mhm.
seems silly. However, Supercell has also shown that over time, with little bumps in power or little nerfs to other things and their power, the player base has found ways to make almost every release work. Right? We've always had this, like, when Yetis first came out, everybody was like, this troop is terrible. Why would I ever use this troop? It's like a
Mhm.
bad P.E.K.K.A. And then people started figuring out how to use Yetis, and not even like a week later, people were like, Yetis are overpowered. They're breaking the game. And like the same thing with Super Wizards. Everybody was like, why would the Super Wizards terrible? Nobody should
Mhm.
ever use them. And then we figured out the Super Wizard blimp, and everybody was like, oh God, this, wow, And so this is kind of the way that the game works. I think a lot of times Supercell has an idea that isn't necessarily play tested as much as they may want. From my discussions with some people before Town Hall 17 released, and they were like trying to temper some of our expectations on the new hero and what was coming down the pipe and all of these things. I was hearing that the Minion Prince was usable, but was not great. That was the impression that I was getting from people in various avenues that were having access to playtest stuff. And then the Minion Prince came out and he's busted. And I think that just comes down to you need the amount of players that are playing Clash of Clans to bash their head against the wall to figure out how to make some of this stuff work. So even though it might sound useless now, I think we're maybe one or two minor changes from having viable stuff. And so I think it's important that we call out the things that aren't working, that aren't useful, that aren't good, so that Supercell gets that feedback to know, all right, we don't necessarily have to go back to the drawing board and start over, but we do need to do something to kind of bump this up a little bit.
Yoda?
Yeah, and I agree with actually everything that he said. I mean, there's ebbs and flows to the game, right? Like if you go back and remember, like when equipment was first released, all right. So everybody said the giant arrow was completely terrible. Nobody used it. Itsu put it in his videos that it was the worst piece of equipment. Don't bother upgrading it. We said the same thing with the earthquake boots. They were terrible. Nobody should use them. And then they buffed that. And now basically, those are two of the most commonly used pieces of equipment, the giant arrow and the earthquake boots for the king. So I think there's ebbs and flows. I mean, look, this stuff that we've talked about, these pants and this Needs machine, it does seem pretty worthless right now. But who knows what the community is going to come up with in 2 to 3 months, or what Supercell may change to the equipment and that siege machine to buff it, or more synergies come out, or attack strategies are revealed that utilize this stuff. So there's ebbs and flows, and the jury's still out. The stuff may seem very terrible to us all right now, but who knows what the future's.
Also, with the troop thrower, what if there's like a new troop that comes out that suddenly works? Like maybe it's like an offensive version of a golem. So instead of having a ton of health and no defense, maybe it has like low health, a ton of damage, and has a death explosion, right? Well, it'd be kind of bad to put that in your main army, right? But maybe flinging it into the base might work. I don't know.
Yep.
There's an idea for them. All right. So another thing they gave us was some new troop levels, archers, healers, P.E.K.K.A.s, miners, bowlers, poison spell, and haste spell all got new levels. So that's kind of exciting for people that I know a few people that still like to do queen charge miners at 17, and
Wild.
yeah, they've been having some fun with it. So. And there was some other stuff that they gave us, some more walls, of course, and then the ability to supercharge the new levels on the new defenses. So that's fun, and that's about it for that part. Quality of life. They gave us something new in the helper hut, the alchemist. You can transform various resources to something else. So gold to dark, etc., etc. She unlocks with gems, and of course, and costs gems to max her till level 7. So, do you guys like her? Which one of the 3 helpers is your favorite? Yoda?
Yeah, so I never have a problem with resources, right? So, famously I've been in Legends for years and have never dropped out. And I just I don't even resources, I don't even ever think about it. Like I always have enough. So this particular new edition really doesn't impact me very, very much. But I do remember when I was, following T's guide as a strategic rusher coming up, and the ability for me to be able to back then to be able to convert various resources over to, say, dark elixir, which is a big bottleneck. I think it's a helpful thing. I'm never a big fan of it costing gems to be able to unlock it. Like what's the one called that speeds up your research? What's that one called? I
The
forgot.
lab ass.
The lab assistant, yeah. So like at least with I hate the little hand waving thing that drives me absolutely bonkers, but at least that one, was the initial level was free on it, right? It didn't cost any gems. So that's my big thing. Is like I don't. It shouldn't cost gems for people to be able to, at least get one level so that you can use it. So that kind of left a little bit of a bad taste in my mouth, but I do think it's going to be very helpful. And I'm sure T has some really good thoughts on this. I'm looking forward to getting his perspective from a strategic rushing standpoint. But I know back when I was doing it, I think it would have been very helpful for me. What do you got, T?
I mean, I'm conflicted because this is pretty much almost word for word what I requested in 2019, 2020. Just some method of being able to convert a dead resource that you no longer need to a live resource that you still need. And if you ignore the gem costs and the gem issue, I think this is one of the most helpful quality of life increases that they have ever released. In that, like, for example, one of the problems with being a strategic rusher and, being like 3/4 of your way through your hero journey, right? Where you've got your heroes in the 8-day upgrade range, but you still have a lot of levels to do. So you can't just like blitz through them with books or hammers. And the Dark Elixir requirements just go up and up and up. And, to your point, Yoda, like Legends League is one of those really nice places to just relax, get your 8 hits in, have a pretty consistent income. You don't need to deal with clouds. You don't need to deal with nexting. And it's one of those things like, hey, I know that I have enough time to execute 2 attacks, and I can just log on the game, get into Legends, and just do those 2 attacks, retrain, request, and log off. Like, that's great. Those are amazing ways to stave off burnout, especially towards the end of your journey where you're kind of getting sick of all of the upgrades and the Dark Elixir requirements and your walls and all that, right? It's solid. But one of the problems is you're capped on how much Dark Elixir you can get, which means there is a limit to the number of what I call Dark Elixir tasks that you can do per day, per builder, per whatever, right?
Mhm.
Where you typically cap out at around 3, meaning you could do pets, 1 hero, and a Dark Elixir research, so a trooper spell. You could do 3 heroes, or you could do 2 heroes and a pet. And if you're doing that, you can stay in Legends and kind of maintain that indefinitely. However, you can't ever do more than that. You'd have to drop out of Legends and do more attacks and get more Dark Elixir because, roughly, what I consider a Dark Elixir task generally is around 30,000 Dark Elixir per day is where the math comes out. And that kind of lines up for most of the pet levels, for most of your hero levels outside of the initial, Town Hall, I guess 7 and 8 and 9 now, up to around Town Hall 11 levels. But, kind of all of your Royal Champion levels, all of your later King, Queen, Minion Prince, all of those things, they kind of work out to around 30,000 a day. Now, if you just get a couple levels of this Alchemist, you can convert 3 million gold or elixir to 20,000 Dark Elixir. And that's pretty nice, I gotta say. I hate that it costs gems. And I really don't like that we now have 3 very expensive gem outlets that all have varying levels of effectiveness. And a new player starts the game with access to around, like, technically they have access to about 17,000 free gems, but a lot of those gems are locked behind extremely lengthy grinds, at 1,000, not even 1,000, like, however many town halls that you have to blow up and how many Inferno towers you have to destroy and all of those things. But a lot of that, 12 to 13,000 of that, you can unlock in probably the first 6 months of playing, which used to mean you could get all of your builders done very early as a free-to-play player and still have enough left over to buy a bunch of Book of Heroes from the trader, once you get to that 8-day level. Well, now we have Luckily, we no longer have to buy catch-up equipment with gems. Now we can get them with event pass materials. Although, caveat there, remember how much of a difference the event pass ore makes towards your time to max all of your equipment. So, like, caveat emptor, like, be careful with where you're spending those event metals, because if it means you can't max out on the purple and orange ore, you're going to get bottlenecked, which is a challenge. So now you have all of these gems to dump into the alchemist. You have all of these gems to dump into the lab assistant. You have all these gems to dump into the apprentice builder. And it's a challenge. It's one of the things that's making it very difficult for me to rewrite the Rush Bible and have, general recommendations for people. I will say the alchemist is my favorite of these three, but slightly with caveats. I think the first couple levels of the alchemist are great, and almost everyone who isn't essentially already maxed should get it, because either it's going to make it easier for you to upgrade your heroes by giving you, essentially a couple free attacks worth of dark elixir every day, or once you've finished all of your heroes, it's going to make it so that you can get, half a wall every single day with something that would otherwise just be overflowing, right? It's not a lot. It's not a huge improvement, but it'll probably cut your wall grind down. If you're doing it as a marathon and not a sprint, it'll probably cut it down by a month. It's not nothing. Second, and kind of, if I was starting a brand new account, this would be the thing that would be my favorite, would be the lab assistant. And the same sort of caveats, like I would never max any of these, because as soon as the levels start to cost 1,000 gems, you're talking about 2 books of heroes per level, which is a big ask, in my opinion. And for the apprentice builder, getting him all the way up to the max level is a roughly 5% reduction in your total time to max, which, if you're strategic rushing, you can use my guide, blah, blah, blah. Instead of taking 18 months, you're going to take 17 and a half months. Right? It's not a big difference. And if you follow my advice and only get the non 1,000 gem level, so that's level 4, you'll, instead of maxing in 18 months and instead of maxing in 17 and a half months, you'll max in 17.6 months. So virtually the same as someone who maxed it, except you'll have 8 extra books. So you'll have like you'll get one of your heroes maxed almost 2 months ahead of time from someone that got their apprentice builder maxed.
Right.
So it's one of those things. It's just, I wish they hadn't done it. Or alternatively, if this is where they want the majority of your free-to-play gems to go, fine. Give us another way in-game to earn the first, up to your 5 builders, right? Because obviously your 6th one comes from builder base. Give us some sort of path, like the recently released, accelerated pass. I forget what they called it for new players, where it's like the premium version of the welcome pass. Yeah. Put builders on that, right?
That would be great.
Right? If you're playing the game, you're a new player, you're willing to spend some amount of money. Like, I haven't seen the details of this pass, of how much it's going to cost and how it's going to run. But imagine you get rewarded for playing the game by getting more things to do, right? It's a win-win for both Supercell and the player, right?
Yep.
Having more builders means you'll play more, which is what Supercell wants anyways. So, I think one of those reasons why builders have cost gems this whole time is because they don't want new free-to-play players to have both the builders, so there's no reason for them to spend money, and no reason and no way for them to spend gems, so that there's no incentive. Like, if Gold Pass and Event Pass aren't going to sucker you into spending some money, well, neither would have gems previously, right?
Sure.
Now we have like 20-something thousand gems required to max these 3, essentially quality of life improvements in the game. Well, now you can't even do that as a free-to-play player. It's going to
Yeah.
take you months of clearing obstacles and selling your your clan games stuff and all of that. You know, it's going
Resource
to take
potions.
forever. Right.
Yeah, for
Exactly.
sure.
So
Yeah.
I don't know. To me, it's like they should 100% make it a little easier for free-to-play players to kind of use that and also get the builders, because that's like that first barrier to getting someone hooked on the game to play long term, and they haven't done anything with like that
Yeah.
initial builder unlock in forever.
Well, speaking of builders, removing an obstacle is not gonna take a builder anymore. So that's actually a nice quality of life thing. And another thing that they gave us, and most of the rest of the quality of life stuff people can read in the patch notes, but I thought this was important, is that defending clan castle troops for legends and friendly challenges, you can now set that yourself. You don't have to sit and request them as a CC troop and then forget that you have them in your CC and you go into an attack with the wrong. So I thought that was great.
Who hasn't done that, right?
Never.
Right.
I would go to Legends League and have the same base that I hadn't used in months, and I would just leave it because I didn't want to fix the clan castle troops. So I don't know. I think that's actually a bigger difference than people might understand for anyone who's doing friendly wars and
Yeah.
FCs. Like that's, and base builders too. I think one of the things that makes it so difficult to become a base builder and to like make good bases is the ability to test out your troops in the clan castle was such a pain that now I think we're gonna see, maybe a few months from now, we're gonna see, I think, different, weirder, stranger, like there used to be a time when trap CCs were a thing, right? Now they're not really, because nobody puts it into their base because they can't like test how effective it is or not. Where I think
Yeah.
we're going to see more of those now.
Yeah, that's actually a really good point from a base building standpoint. I hadn't considered that. That's a really good point.
Mhm.
One of the things that I really appreciated in these quality of life changes was, it might seem small, but the ability to be able to remove obstacles without a builder is huge for a player like me, and I'll tell you why. So historically I have always kept one builder free, and that was for the sole purpose of removing the obstacles, because the problem was, if you had obstacles on your base, you couldn't FC your base, right?
Right.
So I was completely stuck. And as a, probably a more of a competitive player, I do a lot of FCs, and if I didn't have a builder free to remove that obstacle, now I can't FC. So it forced me to always have one builder free, which slowed down my game progression. So that was absolutely huge for me. I was really excited for that. So hats off to him for that.
I will say, Yoda, that what you should have done is you should have come to me and said, "Hey T, I got this problem where I can't FC," and I would have said, "Use an obstacle spawner base as your day-to-day running base, and then all of the obstacles would spawn on the outside rim, and you would never have to deal with any of them spawning on the inside."
And you know what's funny? You and I talked about that several weeks ago, and I didn't even know that was a thing. Like, that was brand new to me when you
Really?
said that. I'm like, what in the world? There's bases that make all the obstacles spawn on the outside. Like,
Uh-huh.
I've been playing this game for years. I had no idea that this was a thing.
Yeah,
Always
you have
listen to
to
T.
get it. Yeah, well, so one of the things, right, is all of my bases have strange things with their obstacles. Like my Town Hall 14 has all of its original 2x2 big stones, and one of those things is like, when you've played the game for a long time and gotten bored and perused the depths of some of the subreddits, you'll find people have made gardens, and they've made like thrones to their little gem box that they've managed to get to spawn in the middle of the base, and you start to wonder, well, how does that work? How did that happen? And then you go down the rabbit hole and you discover that there are specific bases to make things spawn in specific places.
Yes, that's another episode.
Right?
All right. So we also this month got the medal event, which gave us some new king equipment, the snake bracelet. What do you guys think about that one?
Underwhelming. Yeah. So it seems to be a theme with some of the new stuff they've released lately, but that is one piece of equipment that I did not dump any ore into. Um,
I'm shocked.
I'm not yeah, I'm not seeing anybody use it. I
Hmm.
haven't found very many good use cases for it. Again, like we talked about before, I mean, who knows? I mean, this thing was just released, right? Who knows what's going to happen 6 months from now, or just maybe even a few weeks from now, and people get their hands on this thing and have it upgraded, what the community is going to come up with. But for right now, it's for an epic piece of equipment, it's sitting there with the lava loon.
Yeah, yeah. Same with mine.
I think one of those things, it's maybe it's not even that bad necessarily. I just think the king has some of the best equipment.
Hmm.
So it's like, well, why would I ever use the snake bracelet over the spiky ball,
Yeah.
over the vamp stash, over the um what you call it, the giant gauntlet, the rage vial? It's like the king is spoiled for choices in his equipment.
Yeah.
Yep.
And the funny thing is, the king is probably the worst hero right now, shockingly. Even though he's got great equipment and great use, he's kind of the guy you have to drop to bring the minion prince. So it's like, I don't even know that people are really even willing to experiment with the snake bracelet to figure out if it's good or not. But I struggle to see how it could ever be a more effective use than any
Yeah.
of the other equipment that he has.
Well, and we talked at length about, the whole ore situation. I mean, it's a catch
Mhm.
22, right? It's why would I sink valuable ore into this new piece of equipment that, again, nobody's found a use for yet, when I need to finish upgrading my magic mirror or my frozen arrow or whatever other piece of equipment
Mhm.
that's more usable, right?
Mhm. Or
So,
they nerfed the equipment I was using, so now I have to transition to a new set of equipment. Why would I spend time testing some third set of equipment, right?
well,
So
they're going to force us all to use the Lavaloon puppet eventually.
I know that's my lava loon is level 1, my snake bracelet is level 1, my metal pants are level 1, and everything else is either maxed or on its way to maxed.
Yeah.
So
So, Yoda, you had spoken briefly about hard mode. Why
Hmm.
don't you dive into it a little bit more right now? Talk about the hard mode buffs, how it's affecting the CFF esports team.
Hmm.
Do you like the changes?
Yeah, I do, as a matter of fact. So, in case the listeners aren't aware, so hard mode had always had changes over regular mode, and in the past that was a 5% buff to the defenses. So they're basically putting out 5% more DPS. And then the heroes also are nerfed, both the amount of power that they have individually, and then their equipment is also capped at level 21 for epic and then level 15 for common. And that didn't go far enough. Like hard mode was still relatively easy to triple for, decently skilled, players, basically anybody that's doing esports. So in this most recent update that we just got, they actually buffed the defenses to 20% additional DPS. So we went from 5 to 20%. And T's the number guy, and I'm sure he'll tell you that is a significant buff. Like that's a big change to the defenses. And so how is it working in out in reality? Well, it's hard. Like the changes were very effective. Like we have done a recent amount, a ton of esports events, and the types of scores that you're seeing in a 5v5 are 10, 11, 11, 12 maybe, but getting 13 stars in a 5v5 is near impossible. Like this morning when we were doing the world's warm up, we were scanning through the results of the prior month, and obviously the prior week, and basically no team, and remember, there's lots of pro teams that are doing these events. Nobody scored over 13 stars. So it brought back a competitive element, and I would say basically it's somewhere around like Town Hall 15, when Town Hall 15 was at its nastiness. That's kind of the way that it feels. Maybe even slightly more difficult. For example, the war that we did today, nobody on either team got a triple. The score ended up being 10-10, and the winning team won off of percentage. So I think it's a welcome change. I think the competitive player base has been asking for this. I've been asking for this for a long time, and I think it's been well received so far. Have you guys had a chance to play with it yet?
No. I don't.
I'm with you, Kat. I have no interest right now devoting the time required to get to that esport level. However, I do think that they've finally, like, I've been saying this since they came out with hard mode. It should be very hard. It should be one of those things that's like, you have to go to outside resources, you have to practice, you have to learn, you have to know, like, it should have a requirement. And just really try and push it so that there's something to strive for. It shouldn't just be like, oh, it's another 15v15, 5v5, hooray. And to Yoda's point, the difference between a Town Hall 16 scattershot and a Town Hall 17 scattershot is a 4% increase in damage. So a 20% boost in damage is effectively 5 Town Hall levels worth of increase. So it's like, instead of playing at Town Hall 17, you're kind of playing at Town Hall 22, which, like, for a game like this where you need to balance for your average player who's going to spend 0 to 1 minutes on planning of their attacks and still wants to have a chance of tripling, which, you should. It's like, most of this game is built for casual players. So you want to have the casual players having fun. But then if you also want to have an esports scene and you also want to have people that are trying to, like, push to the highest level, this is what we need. And I think that Supercell's got to implement this in Legend Leagues at some barrier. I don't know exactly what number that it should start at, but, like, you hit 5,700 and there should be a warning in the game that pops up and says all attacks done above 5,700. Like, if you start the day at 5,700, all attacks of that day are going to be in hard mode, right? And all of your defenses are going to be in hard mode. And that means, like, well, now we're disincentivizing, buying wins and such, because it's going to be so much harder. And a lot of it will come down to those small differences between, a 72% 2-star and an 85% 2-star. And then, like, those little bits of, it's not going to like, right now it kind of only matters, like, well, if I get 320 medals today and I take 310 medals in defenses, well, like, did I even do anything today? Right? Like, where if there's actually more variance, there's more skill expression, there's more space. So I think hard mode is great for the esports scene, like Yoda said. And I also really think, based on that earlier conversation about, like, what they should do about, win trading and that kind of stuff in Upper Legends League, like, do that, implement a very difficult hard mode to get to that top of the ladder,
Yeah, I agree. All right, we're pushing the envelope on the longest episode ever. So let's move to some questions from the audience for you guys. Stormrider asked, what are some of the characteristics of a serious warring clan that casual players could apply to themselves to get better at the game, Town Hall 17 in specific? Yoda, do you want to handle that?
Yeah, sure. So one of the things, like SOG, we would be considered a more serious war clan, right? And some of the things that people can take away that we do that might be able to help their game is practice. Like that, like when people come to SOG or people are visiting, you will see people constantly doing FCs in SOG. Like, they're constantly practicing, they're constantly monitoring the meta, they're asking questions, they're trying to get better as a player. So there is no magic pill, right? I mean, it's a game, just like anything else. It takes practice to get better at a game, and that's what you ultimately have to do. Is FC as much as possible. Seek advice from people who are better at the game than you are. Another thing that you'll see, like if you're looking at like SOG, is most people are in Legends League and SOG. So when you're in Legends League, and if you're getting your, say, if you're serious, you're doing your 8 attacks a day. If you're less serious, maybe you're doing 4 to 5. But those are legitimate hits. That's legitimate practice that you're getting every single day that you're not going to get if you're just doing farming raids, right? Because you're hitting crap bases. They don't have CCs. You're not gaining war experience by doing that. You're only gaining resources. So I think that people moving up into Legends League is something that you can do to help improve as a more casual player. So those are the things that I would say.
Pete?
I think Yoda hit most of the stuff for personal improvement. I think part of the other half of it is also engaging in the right community, where you want people to be taking their attacks seriously. You want an environment where you can ask people for feedback on your attacks. Because one of the things that's very difficult about improving as a player is you might be able to say like, okay, I did this attack, I think this is where I messed up, right? Like this is where the attack started to go wrong. But without someone that can look at it and say, you know what, you were actually good to that point. Your mistake was actually over here, right? Or your mistake was the very beginning of the attack because you picked the wrong entry point.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think one of the things that people kind of discount is like, yes, you have to put the time in, you have to do the practice, but getting good constructive feedback and not being defensive about it is a huge component of getting better at the game.
100%
Yeah.
agree.
And then, if I could just add one thing, because T just
Yep.
jogged my memory on something. I actually picked this up from one of T's original podcasts back in the day. He actually brought this up, and it was kind of eye opening to me as basically as almost like a brand new player back then. But one of the things he said is, if you don't need to finish out an entire FC. Okay. Say I just want to work on my giant arrow, or I want, my entry, or whatever it might be that you're working on. You
Mm-hmm.
could just repeat that over and over again. You don't have to sit there and play out a 3 minute FC, because you
Yeah.
could sit there and you could play out a 3 minute FC, right? Or you could do 10 giant arrows in a row if that's what you were trying to practice. So, and you'll see guys in SOG doing that all the time. Like that's, you'll go in and you'll see the log, and everybody's got like 30-second attacks. Well, that's because they're concentrating and practicing on one aspect of that attack,
Right.
and they're not worried about the rest of it that they're already good at. So that would be another recommendation we'll give.
Yeah, like a
Excellent.
perfect example is trying to learn the RC charge. You
Mm-hmm.
don't need to finish the attack. The RC charge is that first component, right? So who cares about the rest of the 2.5 minutes of time that you have? Just do more of the RC charges,
Yeah,
Yep.
that's great advice. All right. L from RedThorn asked, what originally got you both into Clash of Clans and what keeps you playing today? T?
Good take.
So my original entry into Clash of Clans was, I think it was like 2012, 2013. And without going into too many personal details, I was in and out of the hospital a whole bunch in that time frame. And so I didn't have access to my computer, which was primarily where I was playing games. And I couldn't really focus on reading books. Like my long-term, it's not really like long-term memory, but it was just like I couldn't maintain focus for hours at a time. I had moments where it was like, okay, I have like 10 to 15 minutes where everything's okay and I can just kind of like put my head down and do something. And so I was looking for something that I could pick up, put down, 5-10 minutes max throughout the day. And Clash of Clans was like kind of perfect for that at the time because I wasn't playing seriously. I wasn't doing esports or warring or any of that stuff. I was just kind of like messing around and playing. And at the time, I kind of figured out how to rush, and that's like optimization puzzles have always attracted me. Like almost every game I've ever gotten deep into has had some element of an optimization puzzle at its core. And so I started playing. I got to Town 9, I got to Town 10, and I quit the game. I think I've mentioned it on a bunch of podcasts before, where I quit the game when they took dead bases out of matchmaking and were trying. That's like when they implemented the league bonuses, so that like you got bonuses for doing attacks at higher leagues and so on. And I quit. That was like the end. So then fast forward to 2018 ish, and I was actually playing Brawl Stars because again I was looking for I was doing a lot of work where I had 5-10 minutes of dead time throughout the day, right? I'd be I was doing customer service, I was bartending, I was doing some photography stuff. So it was like there'd be moments where I'd have done all the prep and like the job didn't start yet. So I was just like sitting around doing nothing. So I was looking for something that would fill up a couple minutes of time where I couldn't, I wasn't home, I couldn't engage with TV or anything. And Brawl Stars was great. And then I started to get frustrated with the matchmaking in Brawl Stars because I was starting to get pretty good at the game. And then I would like play games and you'd be matched up with these people who were like, do you have thumbs? Or do you understand that we're playing a game that has goals and ain't? Well, anyway, so I started to get like very angry about it. So I was like, okay, can't do this. And then I discovered the Clash with Dusk Rush guide. And I was like, hey, I think I remember this guy. And I went back and I read all my old forum posts. And often when I was arguing with people about whether or not you should max before you upgrade your town hall, there was this other dude in the forums also arguing that rushing was more effective. And I was like, huh. And I looked at his name and his name was, Dusk or whatever. I don't remember his forum name off the top of my head. I was like, oh, it's the same guy. And, he was being a little aggressive on the Reddit, but like his blog explained exactly how he started, exactly what he did. And he was responsible for the original guide that I followed to rush my way to the maxing. And then when he quit, that's kind of when I started to be like, oh, we need this resource. Reddit is still extremely anti-rushing. And that's when I really got deep into Clash. And it also kind of corresponded with, when everybody was home for the thing that shall not be named. And that's like when I started to really get into Clash, was writing the guide, figuring out how to explain rushing to people, arguing with people on Reddit. And like that's really where I transitioned and what kept me playing for a very long time.
Yoda?
Yeah, so I actually started playing in 2020, and it was basically as a result of the thing that we're not going to mention, which is COVID.
Well, you mentioned it.
You said it.
Yeah, we mentioned it. I said it. But that's what happened. I mean, we were all stuck inside, right? There wasn't anything to do. We were all locked in, and I was like, well, I guess I'll try to find a new game to play. And there was this game I used to play like way back in the day when I was a kid. It was called Age of Empires.
Oh, that was
And
cool.
yeah, it was on computer, and it was just a game that I really really enjoyed. So I was like, well, let me see if there's anything that's new that's close to that. And I just happened to stumble upon Clash of Clans. I had never seen the commercials for it. I'd never heard what it was, and it just looked similar to that game. So I downloaded it and didn't think I was gonna play it. Like my original account name was just simply me because I didn't want to get creative thinking about what I was gonna name the account. But eventually, I became addicted to it. Both my wife and my son, they downloaded the game, and they've since quit playing. But I'm still here. But yeah, that's how I got into it. And what keeps me around is the competitiveness of it. Like I really enjoy competition, and I really enjoy the esports scene, and I really enjoy Legends League. Specifically, Legends League in particular is probably what keeps me here, because that's my time where I can relax. Like most people, or some people, they get off work, they watch TV, or they go to maybe a bar, or whatever it is that they do to unwind. For me, it's doing all my Legends like that. Like I do them every single day. I look forward to it. I enjoy it, and it's probably the reason I keep playing.
Awesome.
What about you, Kat? What's keeping you?
What's
Yeah.
keeping me? I'm really not sure some days. I enjoy the game, as frustrating as it can be at times. But mostly it's the community, the people in, the RedThorn server, and the people I interact with on a daily basis that really keeps me playing. A lot of it's just such a big part of my life now. I've been playing it for so many years that I couldn't imagine not being able to play it every day, and to speak to my friends, like, because I have made real friends, and it's important to me.
Yeah, going back to the previous question about how to get better, that's one, right? Make friends that are better than you and talk to them about it.
And most of my friends are better than me, so.
Right. I'm not. It's funny. One of the things, like, I've been invited to, I can't even tell you how many clans to do like guest wars and stuff. And I almost always turn them down, partly because my this is a very dumb reason, but my main account has only ever been in like 5 clans ever. And so I kind of like that its clan history is so clean. But the other half of it is that people think that I'm gonna like come over and do like an easy 6-pack and like teach people how to do stuff. And it's like there was a time when that would have been true, and that time was Town Hall 13. I was very good because I was playing a lot. That's right around the time where we were all inside, right? And so that time has passed. That's not like, unlike Yoda, I don't really engage with the super hyper competitive aspects of the game anymore, because for me, like Yoda, it's a relaxing thing, and I like the farming aspect and the optimization aspect. And like you, Kat, I like talking to people about the game, especially new players, getting them excited, getting them through some of the bottlenecks and challenges in the game, and figuring out all that stuff. Like, that's fun. But like, having the friends is like, if I wasn't in Discord and talking to people about the game, I would have quit years ago.
Yeah, for sure. All right, we're going to jump into some top 5 stuff here. So we're going to do the top 5 critical pieces of hero equipment that we think people should focus on. Yoda, what's your number 5?
All right, so on my list is primarily going to be made up of common equipment, because you can get these maxed relatively quickly over the others. So actually, 4 of my 5 are all going to be common, but number 5 for me is going to be the giant arrow. Specifically for air attacks, that thing is just it's cheap, right? It's cheap to upgrade, and it's very OP for air attacks. And I'm even seeing a lot of people running it on ground attacks as well. So number 5, giant arrow for me.
T, what's your number 5?
This is I saw this in the notes and I was like, I don't have I they're all tough.
You got to pick one.
I know. I think like Yoda, the majority of mine are common, because for a new player, your starting income is just like so bad. I think for me, number 5, Yoda with your giant arrow kind of crushed me. I think it's got to be the healing tome for the Grand Warden, because it's I want to put it higher, but it's one of those things where it's kind of used everywhere, and the individual levels aren't something that's suddenly going to like make or break your attacks, but it's something that should be in the first 8 for sure. And I think it's got to be in the top 5.
Fair enough. My number 5 is the healer puppet for the queen.
Mm.
I think that's important. What's your number 4, Yoda?
Well, my number 4 happens to be the healer puppet. Again, it's just I think the synergy with the giant arrow, it pairs very well, because obviously you're gonna, in most cases you're gonna fire the arrow at the beginning of an attack and out pop those healers, and guess what? They stay with you for the duration of the attack. So yep, number 4 is healer puppet for me.
T?
Man, I think that this one has to be. I don't know. Like, if you had asked me 2 months ago, I would have said Rocket Spear here, because it was very good, and now kind of fallen out of the meta a little bit. So I think for number 4, I think this is where I would put the giant arrow. I actually don't think you need the healer puppet to use the giant arrow effectively. I think almost any of the other equipment that the Archer Queen has, it's not going to be as good, but it is usable with the giant arrow, because the giant arrow is going to unlock the fundamental component of what you want for your air attack. So that's me.
My number 4 is the hog puppet for the RC, because I love that thing. What's your number 3, Yoda?
All right, so this is going to be my only epic piece of equipment, but it's got to be the electro boots. Those things. I mean, I know that they recently got a nerf, but that did basically nothing. Those things are completely overpowered. I would highly recommend people run that on their RC. So electro boots.
T?
It's the boring answer. It's the electro boots. I think it is. It's one of those things where there's a moment before you have the electro boots, and there's a valuation that you make for how you use your royal champion, and then you get the electro boots and you get them to a reasonably high level, and you're like, oh, I get it. These things are insane. So yeah, I think, and again, one of the nice things about the electro boots is I don't think you need any specific other piece of equipment to use them with. I
Mhm.
think
Yep.
how you use the RC will change depending on what secondary piece of equipment you use, but I think they're kind of like a pain-free, you know, like there's no downside to equipping them. Essentially, they're always good in kind of any way that you're using the RC. So you could just kind of get away with those and anything as your secondary for the RC.
All right. My number 3 is the spiky ball for the king.
Ooh.
Love that thing.
Yeah, that's a good one. Thing's awesome.
What's your number 2, Yoda?
All right, so my number two, going back to my boy the Minion Prince, it's that dark orb. We talked about it at the beginning of the episode, but that thing is just wild. If you get your shot right, I mean it freezes like a third of the base. It's pretty insane. It's overpowered and definitely the number two spot for me, Dark Orb.
He?
I think I gotta go. I know this is gonna be a little controversial, and I could go either way with my 1 and 2, but I think my number 2 is the Eternal Tome for the Warden.
Good answer.
I think between the healing tome and the Eternal Tome, you're kind of well equipped for any attack in the entire game, because there are other viable combinations that you can use for the Warden, but no matter ground, air, queen charge, not queen charge, spam, not spam, surgical, not whatever, that always works. It is
Yep.
always good. It will work for any. I think it's the most viable combination of any two pieces of equipment in the entire game.
I have to agree because my number 2 is also the Eternal Tome.
Hey.
What's your number 1, Yoda?
So that's interesting. I can't wait to hear what your guys' number one is, because I just assumed that everybody would have the Eternal Tome as the number one piece of equipment. That's my number one. For all the points that T just made, it's on his number two spot. Those are the reasons it's on my number one spot.
All right. What's your number 1 then, T?
Well, should come to no surprise, seeing that it has not been on the list before, is the Dark Orb for the Minion Prince.
Yep.
I think it's just so warping, like doing a dragon or hydra or any air attack with the Minion Prince with a maxed out orb versus not. It's night and day. It's insane. And granted, the Warden is also one of those warping fields where, like, if you swap your Warden out, you're going to probably fail. But I think it's just one of those things where all of a sudden attacks become so much easier to do when you land a good orb that I just for it's common, you unlock it in Town Hall 9, you can have it the entire journey all the way up. Like, it's bonkers to me that is one of the release pieces of equipment. Like, it almost feels like the Dark Orb should have been the thing that came out instead of the pants, and the pants should have been what came out with the henchman, right? Like or almost like the Dark Orb should have been an epic piece of equipment. It's insane for the value that you get for only the 18 levels that it takes.
Well, since I can't speak to anything about the Minion Prince, my number 1 is Earthquake Boots for the king, because I hate when my heroes get stuck behind a wall and they're hammering on this stupid piece of wall. So just blow it up already.
I mean, it's funny because I haven't used my Barbarian King since Town Hall 17 released, even though he was my second hero that I maxed. So it's funny because, like, since you've been working on your Minion Prince, naturally, your list actually has 2 Barbarian King equipments, and I don't, Yoda, yours didn't have any BK equipment, right?
Nope, none.
Yeah, neither did mine. So I think that gives you a little bit of insight into, like, what we're feeling about the Minion Prince, right? Like, that puts a nail in the coffin, right?
I'm also a ground attacker, so it's a big difference there, right?
Fair, also true. Yeah, I've been doing almost exclusively air attacks like Yoda, so makes sense.
All right, let's do some shout outs. T, do you have any shout outs?
Listen, every time we do these shout outs, and it's more okay. definitionally, right? A shout out is for somebody who is not here that you're calling out, right?
Mm-hmm.
And yet every time I come on, I do my shout outs, and then you and Yoda are so kind and so nice that you're like, I got to shout out T for coming on the podcast. And every time I'm like, man, I should have done that. So I got to shout out both you, Kat, and you, Yoda. Kat, for being so supportive since Sons of Guns joined Clash Files family. Like, you've been nothing but supportive and helpful. You've had Yoda and I on the podcast a bunch. It's always been a blast. So thank you for that. Yoda, man, you're the best. Like, Sons of Guns wouldn't be where we're at without you. I do appreciate that you've made me do the CWL lineups for the last, I don't know, 8 months or whatever it's been. It actually has kept me engaged because it's its own little optimization puzzle, right? Like, I've had to figure out where to shift people and how to, make all of the rosters make sense. So even though I might gripe a little bit in private, I do appreciate you for all you do and for making me do stuff too. Additionally, I want to shout out like all the guys in Sons of Guns who've been really stepping up. We got different guys running the 1v1 because some people have to take a step back. We've got new players coming in that are stepping up and organizing stuff. So all you guys have been doing great. And I have to personally shout out Cool Rick, who is always my guy. Whenever there's a new update, I always like poke him for his thoughts, and we always have these little conversations about where we think the game is going, and he's like kind of my sounding board for like, hey, am I being crazy for thinking this? And we'll have a whole conversation. And he's just been a really really good friend, and he's always helped us out when we needed random accounts for different spins and different wars, and he's just kind of never like anytime you reach out with anything to him, he's always been positive and a yes, and like I've never reached out to Rick and him been like, yeah, go sit and spin. He's always like just the kindest guy. So I just got a shout out to Cool Rick.
Awesome. Yoda.
All right. So thank you, T. I really appreciate you saying all that. So my first shout out I have is actually for Drac and his son Wolfblade, and then Fuzzy, kind of all together. So I have been on a ton of podcasts. I don't even know how many it's been at this point. It's a lot. And we did something unique about a week ago. Drac and I, we were actually we were having a conversation via text on Discord, and he was like, "Wow, this is a really kind of a fascinating conversation. Like, we should record it." I was like, "Well, I guess we can all just get together and record it and have a conversation and see what happens." And that's exactly what we did. So the four of us got together. Literally, there was no agenda. We just sat down and talked for like 45 minutes and recorded it, and out popped the podcast episode. So wanted to shout those guys out because I thought that was a really kind of neat twist at something I had never done. So I thought it was really good. Go check it out if you guys haven't yet. I thought I want to shout out the people who submitted questions for this podcast. When I was reviewing the show notes, I was like, wow, these are some really good questions. So I wanted to make sure that the people that submitted them knew that I thought they were really good. I really did. Next up, I want to shout out two people who do a tremendous job for not only the Sons of Guns, but the CFF behind the scenes when it comes to esports. And that's Antonymous. And then somebody new, somebody named Day Day also joined the team. And those guys put in, and Kat, I know that you've done esports and done things behind the scenes. T, I know you have as well. Let me tell you, organizing all that stuff is a ton. It really is a chore. You've got to communicate with people in India and Europe, and you're trying to schedule these matches, and it's a lot of work. And especially for like Day Day, she doesn't even play. She doesn't play esports. She just helps us organize all these matches out of the kindness of her heart. So I want to make sure those two knew that I, not only me, but I know everybody on the esports team appreciates all that they do. And then finally, Kat, thank you for being brave enough to have T and I on again for another marathon episode. You
2
you are
hours.
you're definitely a glutton for punishment. So thank you for being brave enough to have us back on. We appreciate it.
It's always a pleasure. My shout outs to you guys, obviously, for agreeing to come on and be my guest today. Much appreciated. Love having you on. And I want to shout out Magnus, because every month he leads the charge on organizing CWL for all 3 clans in the RedThorn group. He also helps out the Phoenix Reloaded sort their stuff out. And he does all this while juggling his work and school and family life. And I can't even begin to tell you all how very much I appreciate everything he does, not just for the clan, but for me personally. And Magnus, I'm still sorry I forgot to let you do your shout out on episode 100. And that's it from us, folks. Thank you very much for listening. The CFF is a family of clans who love to play various games such as Clash of Clans, Clash Royale, and others. You can send questions or comments to us on Twitter at RedThornCOC. To get more information on our clans, events, and podcasts, join the CFF Discord at discord.gg/clashfiles.
Dear Clash Gods, I confess my emotions have been a mess. Cause you changed everything we ever knew. From witches to poison and the Queen Walk too.